Oh, bugger. Bad, bad, bad.
The 10,000 hour theory suggests that it takes that long to become intuitively proficient at any given task. So I've done a few casual calculations and figure that if I were to ride every weekend for 3 hours, which is about what I averaged over this past summer, according to the 10,000 hour theory, it would take me a little over 64 years to become a decent rider. Maybe. Given the age at which I have chosen to start riding, that pretty much means I'll suck at it until I die. I was first bitten by the motorcycle bug as a kid, but unfortunately, Mom was not going to let me have anything to do with death on two wheels. So it was a long time before I finally got what I wanted. It wasn't until my daughter came to me asking what I thought about her getting her bike license that I actually did something about it. So we took a bike course together. A month after the course, I bought my first bike, a 1979 Suzuki GS 550. But I didn't keep it for long because it had too many engine problems, and while I'm not a mechanic, I have tools and I can figure things out if I've got the manual in front of me. But the GS was going to be a lot of work, and I really just wanted to spend my time riding, not fixing. And that's still true at the time of this video, which is 2 years after buying that bike. So, exit the GS 550 and enter the 2011 Kawasaki Versys 650. It's a sport touring bike, but being an ultra noob when I bought it, I too readily believed the hype on the forums by other Versys owners that this was an adventure bike. I have always been an outdoors kind of person, and I was looking for a bike to get me to the middle of nowhere. But it only took a couple of trips off-road with the Versys for me to realize that it is not an adventure bike. So, after much reading and research into what would be the right adventure bike for me, enter the Suzuki DRZ 400S, and a somewhat inadvertent introduction to single-track riding. And I will get back to that in a few minutes. I bought the DRZ at the end of October, which corresponds roughly to the end of the riding season where I live. But undeterred by the weather, I rode anyway at little dirt patches that I found locally, just trying to get a feel for things. It's a little funny looking at this footage now and seeing just how slow and unsteady I was. I also took the winter to add accessories to the bike, all based on things that I had read on forums. Rad guards, hand guards, dash plate. I rejetted the carb, put on handlebar risers, folding mirrors, pannier racks, an oversized Clark gas tank, tidy tail, and I wired it for heated gear. Because when you're new with a new bike, you gotta ride in the winter, just like I said. Unfortunately, we had a really crappy winter. We don't ordinarily get snow that sticks here, but we had snow on the ground and temperatures that stayed below zero, so I was frozen out of riding for about 2 months. After the long winter though, I was pretty excited to get out riding and was spending time online trying to find some off-road routes to get out on. In the process of researching riding areas, I found a few local motorcycle clubs. I actually had no idea that those sorts of things existed up until that point. I guess that may cause a few eye rolls, but you don't know what you don't know. I have come to motorcycles and riding more or less on my own, and I suspect, like many new riders, the first place you end up getting information from is media sites and magazines, and as I now realize, those sources really don't reflect the true nature of riding. So anyway, I posted on a club forum that I was looking for other riders that were into tackling some easy off-road rides, and that's how I met Mike and Craig. These two guys have been awesome friends on the trail. With a noob in tow, they have spent a lot of their riding time not riding, waiting for me to catch up and catch my breath, and I am grateful for that. My skills on the trail, while they are still poor in the grand scheme of things, are much better than they would have been had I not been able to ride with them. Also, as I look back over the helmet cam footage and listen to all the dumb stuff I say when we were stopped, it really is a testament to their patience and willingness to dumb things down and slow things down for someone just learning. The first ride with them was on a Forest Service road, but it wasn't long before we headed off to explore a trail. I only made it 100 meters or so before I got too nervous and chickened out. The second time I rode with them was my true introduction to trail riding. We traveled to the McNutt riding area, and that's maintained by the Bloom Mountain Motorcycle Club if you're interested. And when we got there, they told me we were going to ride some easy trails. I remember 30 seconds into the first trail thinking, if this is easy, I'm in real trouble. I've been an active guy my whole life, an avid cyclist, hiker, runner. I flew paragliders for a few years, and I've pretty much been going to the gym since I was a teenager. But when I got to the end of that first trail, which was a short trail, about 10 minutes, I was done in. At that point, I'd been riding motorcycles on the street for just over 2 years and never thought that riding motorcycles could demand such an extraordinary kind of fitness, and one I obviously didn't have. Trail riding is a workout. For me, it's been a test of physical endurance that rivals anything I ever did before. I'm really hoping that my fitness for riding will change as I gain more skill and better balance on the bike, because my first riding season was a real eye-opener. I did get a little faster as the summer wore on and tried to keep up with the guys. Riding behind Mike and Craig on their dual sports, a WR250R and a CRF 250L, and seeing how well they manage the trails with machines that are comparable to the DRZ, kept my determination to master the DRZ on the trails, but for a while. Despite their riding acumen on their dual sports, as I gained a bit more experience on the DRZ, I started to suspect that perhaps I was not on the right bike for enduro-style trail riding. I grew up on a farm with a BMX-style bicycle, riding off jumps and berms, over railroad tracks and rocks, and through muddy forests, and I was feeling like the DRZ was never going to translate to the motorcycle equivalent for that. Over this past season of watching and reading motovlogs, I have heard it said a number of times that the ability to ride through challenging terrain is more about rider skill than it is about the type of bike you're riding, and I believe that's true. But I've been around for long enough to know that when you start to learn a new skill, you can be frustrated while you're learning if you're using the wrong tool for the job or just crappy tools. Now, the DRZ is by no means a crappy tool for riding, but just based on my own short experience with the bike, it's definitely better suited to lightweight adventure riding than it is to riding over rocks and roots on narrow forest trails in the Canadian Rockies. It's been a wonderful bike for overnight trips, on back roads and Forest Service roads, and strangely enough, I prefer it to my street bike for running errands in the city. It's tall, and that gives me great visibility and makes me more visible to drivers. It's narrow and nimble, it's easy to squeeze through traffic, and more than enough power for city speeds. On the highway, well, it's a 400cc dual sport that I've geared down for trails, but I have ridden it on the highway and for some long trips. And now begins my tale of woe. One day, we were out traveling Forest Service roads because the forest trails were closed to riding because of the forest fire hazard, and anyone living on the west coast of North America during 2017 will know what I'm talking about. We had turned aside from the road to explore a lake, and on our way out from the lake, there was a short, steep hill, and the road had loose rock on it. On my way up the hill, my front wheel washed out on the rock. I put my foot down to dab, and it snagged and twisted my knee. It was pretty much the most painful thing I had experienced in my life to that point. We were on our way to a waterfall to have a swim, and after a few minutes of me sitting on the ground, swearing and pouting, things felt better, so I got up and went back to the bike, and we continued on. There was a bit of a hike down to the river and the waterfall, and Craig and Mike, the poster boys for patience, waited while I slowly limped down the river, and that in hindsight was a mistake. The next day, things were ugly. My knee was badly swollen and I couldn't put weight on it. The doctor advised me that I had partially torn some ligaments and probably added to an already torn meniscus, and that was the end of trail riding for almost 2 months. It was also the end of my aspirations to continue to tackle single track on the DRZ, and the beginning of my research into what bike would fill the role of trail bike for me when I had recovered enough to get back on the trails. So, long story short, after a lot of online opinion shopping and motovlog watching and reading of manuals and specification brochures, I bought a Beta Cross Trainer. Another bike to love. And at this point, the garage is starting to be overcrowded with bikes that I love. Whatever. Although, I may be a bit premature in my amorous inclinations for the Beta because, in truth, I haven't ridden it enough to make a judgment. As of the making of this video, I have ridden it a grand total of 15 kilometers, about an hour and a half on the trails in the course of one morning's worth of riding. It was a glorious hour and a half though, but unfortunately it ended in the lamest of crashes out of all my lame crashes, with me just washing out on gravel on the slightest of curves. I am still wondering what I did to invoke such horrible karma, because when I went down, the handlebar dug into the road and flipped the bike up and around so that it landed on my leg. The brake pedal went through my boot and through my foot, snapping the first metatarsal on the way. That resulted in a compound fracture and a trip to the surgery and a screw to reassemble. I'm looking forward to my next trip through the airport security. That effectively put an end to my riding for the rest of the season. As I record and edit this video, it's 7 weeks after the surgery and I am able to put a bit of weight on my foot now. The monsoon season has arrived in the lower mainland, but I was able to get out on the Versus this last week for a couple of short rides. With luck, the snow will hold off for a few more weeks at the higher elevations, and I will be able to get back on the Beta and the DRZ for some rides and get back into shape for next season. Until then, stay tuned.